So, so picture this for a moment. Only one out of 150 investment opportunities reviewed by a VC firm eventually receives an investment. And just in case this is difficult for you to understand, that is 0.7%. As difficult as it is to get into Harvard, Harvard's acceptance rate is 3.1%. I believe now you get the message. So the question now is, what makes the difference? How does one get into that tiny 0.7% that eventually receives a VC investment? The answer is simple. You have to be an investment worthy startup. Now, the process through which the investor, the VC firms try to identify which company, which investment opportunity is investment worthy is what is now known as the deal evaluation and due diligence process. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down all the different stages in the deal evaluation process of VC firms. I'm going to be highlighting the different timelines involved, the critical expectation in each of these different phases, and who are the individuals within that VC firm that takes responsibility for that. All just to help you to stand a better chance of scaling the due diligence process of a VC firm. So without any further ado, let's get started. So you may be asking, what is due diligence and why this whole deal review and deal evaluation process in the first place? So due diligence is just basically the VC firm looking in-depthly into that particular investment opportunity to try to understand the different upsides and different downsides of that investment. Bearing in mind that some of these investments are going to fail, but they want to be able to identify ahead of time some of those potential risks to make a decision whether they want to take on the risk or just pass on that particular deal. And that can be a very, very, very challenging task. Why? The typical VC firm, depending on its size and reputation, will be seeing several thousands and thousands of views. Anderson Horowitz, for instance, sees about 4,000 views per annum. That could be a lot. And most of these VC firms, they operate a very, very lean staff strength of, let's say, between 7 to 11 different staff members. So they may not have the bandwidth to look in-depthly into all the different deals that come into their pipeline. So because of that, in order to still be able to stay efficient, that is why many VC firms have developed different layers of review processes. All of them, all these different layers with its own level of intensity and the critical information or the critical decision points that they are looking out for that is going to help them to make that particular investment decision. And typically the due diligence process or the entire deal evaluation process from the time when a deal comes into the pipeline of the VC firm to when they eventually make money, when they eventually wire money to the startup, will typically take about 90 days. So in order to stay efficient, like I mentioned, they have developed several layers of review just to help them move quickly between deciding whether to go ahead with a particular deal or not to go ahead with that particular deal. But then I must mention, they don't have stated 90 days, but this timing could also change significantly depending on how hot that particular startup is. And the investors, the VC firm doesn't want to miss out on that particular deal, so they want to get an allocation on the startup cap table. So sometimes their decision to invest may not be based on very rational evidence-based due diligence, but more or less on gut feeling. But more on that in a subsequent video. So laying everything out, so you typically find different layers of review that VC firms go through. So the initial review that is conducted, having a call with founders, doing a more in-depth due diligence, then preparing an investment memorandum that is eventually taken to an investment committee. So I'm going to be doing a deep dive into all these different review processes. So the first one being the initial review, and I'm going to try to talk to them through what is examined, the source of information, the timeline involved, who is involved in the review process, and the expected outcome. So in terms of initial review, so the initial review usually takes around an hour and mostly handled by the analyst, especially when it's an inbound deal that came into the pipeline. So the essence is just to get a good sense of that particular investment opportunity as to whether they're going to invest or just pass on the deal right away. And critically, they look at the fit of that particular investment opportunity to the investment thesis. I've mentioned this in several videos before that every VC firm will tend to have an investment thesis, an overarching strategy that guides their investment decision to say, oh, we only invest in female-led startups. We only invest into startups that are having an impact on climate change. We only invest into early stage fintech companies. So that is the overarching investment thesis that will guide that particular VC firm. So they now evaluate whether that startup in the pipeline, whether they align with this investment thesis. If they align, then it is a bonus. They will be most likely want to look at it further. If they don't align, it may be an outright rejection of that particular startup. Then the other part that is now critical as well is the problem and the solution. So the problem that the startup is trying to solve, is this something that the customer has as a pain? Is it something that they are looking to solve, or is it just a nice to have? And also the solution, does the solution effectively address that particular customer pain? And not just addressing the customer pain, but also are the customers willing to pay for the solution at the price which the startup is asking. So that's where we talk about product to market fit. So that's what they tend to look at when they're examining the problem and the solution. Then the third part that they examine at the initial level of review is the market opportunity. The market is very, very critical. If you cannot be able to find the market for this product, then growth and scalability become very, very difficult. Or if you can find the market, but the market is so tiny that let's say in a month or in 2 months, you can be able to serve all the market and there is no potential for growth, then VCs may not be interested. Then the other part now is the business model and the scalability of the business model. And in very simple terms, business model is all about how the business is going to make money. Are they serving business to customers, or and if they're serving business to customers, how are they capturing value? Are they capturing value through subscription fees, commissions paid on transaction, right? Or let's say fee for service. So these are the different things that they look out for in the business model and how the business model can scale. So sometimes the innovative part of a business may not be the product itself, but the innovation around the business model. So that is also very critical for VC firms. The other part is also and very, very critical is the team. The team is very, very critical, especially for early stage investment, because most VC firms understand that at that early stage, they are making a bet on the founders and their ability to execute on the business, right? So they look at the founders and majorly they consider things like, okay, what is the experience of this founder in the industry that they are trying to solve the problem, and also have they been able to build something in the past? Have they built a successful business and exited the business? So many times they want to favor startups that are, let's say, second time founders and they have experienced management team. Then the other part is traction. Traction is very, very key for VC firms, because unlike angel investors and they may most likely invest into a startup at that point when it's just an idea and all they have in the pitch deck, most VC firms will want to come in at the point of post revenue. So they have started seeing some sort of monthly recurring revenue, and that helps them to validate the fact that okay, there is a market for this product, there is growth potentials, and then there is the customers are willing to pay for the product. So you want to be able to report traction critically at your in your pitch deck so that the VC firm sees progress. And then the last part that they tend to look out for when it comes to this initial review process is past investors. So when looking at your pitch deck or reviewing information, they want to know who else has backed this particular company, who else is interested in this company. Help them to validate the fact that okay, this startup is credible, and not only the fact that they are credible, that in subsequent rounds when they are going to need investment, that they're able to raise from further investors. So the profile of the people on your cap table is very, very important. So I review a lot of pitch decks and I see that sometimes some startups miss or take out the investors that have invested in them. I don't think that is ideal for you. It helps you in any way. So in terms of the source of information where VCs turn to answer all of these different questions. So number one is the pitch deck. The pitch deck is very, very critical and it should be very short and concise and straight to the point. Ideally between 10 to 15 pages. I've seen a pitch deck that was like 60 something pages, and bearing in mind that the person has less than an hour to review this pitch deck, so you have to be sure that you are effective and efficient in creating your pitch deck. Then also return to the company website, go to the Play Store or App Store to download the app and just try out their hands around the app just to understand what is the look and feel of this particular app. Right. Then also look at certain websites on that online platform like Crunchbase that tends to document different information about startups so that they can see other critical information that they need to make in decision. And then other publicly available information. So this is where it's very much important that your content creation strategy as a startup has to be on point, because many times if you have quality content, it tends to give more information about your business beyond what is reported in your pitch deck. And then also press releases, interviews that you've done in the past, put them out there is very, very critical. It helps to provide more information about your startup. And like I mentioned, the people that are mostly involved are the investment analysts, associate, especially for inbound deals. Then for the expected outcome of the initial review process will either be, okay, let us proceed to the next stage, and the next stage will be speaking to the founders, or outright rejection of the startup, or okay, maybe not an outright rejection either on the basis of the fact that it doesn't fit into our investment thesis, but more like we've not seen enough traction that is going to make us interested, so we like to move this deal further to the future when we're able to say. So that is it for the first stage. Then the second stage is now a call with the founders. So the initial review provides that early understanding about the startup, but as usual, the analyst will have several questions based on the checklist of that particular firm that they would like to ask. So they get on the founders call, and the goal of the founders call is to have better context about certain things. Okay, what is the story behind setting up this business? Try to understand your why behind the startup and have a feel of the vision and the growth potential of that startup. Also understanding certain crucial metrics about the performance of the company over time. In a subsequent video, I'm going to be talking about crucial metrics that every founder needs to know before getting on a call with potential investors. So do well to turn on your notification button so that you don't miss out on that video when I post it. Then other aspect is also looking at the team dynamics, because ideally in such calls, the co-founders will be on the call. So they want to gauge what the sort of dynamics is between how well do they bond together, how well do they work together, right? Because the success of the startup to a large extent will depend on the founding team. Overall, trying to gauge the personality of the individuals, right? And then another part is the business strategy and the growth plan. If I'm coming in as an investor into your business, whatever historical performance that you've reported, although that is very good, that is very, very critical, but then it doesn't really add value to me because it's something that has happened in the past. I'm concerned about the future, how the money I'm going to be giving to you, how it's going to take you from point A to point B to grow your business. So you should be able to report convincingly the growth plan of that particular business. And in terms of the source of information, like I mentioned, it's just a call that happens. Sometimes it's a virtual call, especially these days post COVID-19. Sometimes it could be like having a lunch together, or having dinner, or having breakfast to have this call. And it usually ranges between 30 minutes to about an hour, but mostly around 30 minutes. That is the average time that this calls tend to last. Now, in terms of the timeline from when you actually reached out or you dropped into the pipeline to when you eventually get a call, will take anywhere between 1 week to 2 weeks. But then that would depend on how the sort of priority that is placed on that particular deal, the source where it's coming from. So VCs tend to prioritize deals that are coming from referrals, as I mentioned in my earlier video, than those that are coming from inbound. So when they have lots of deal backlogs to clear out, they tend to prioritize those that are coming from referrals first to have a call with them. Then in terms of the people that tend to go on those calls, they are the associate, the analyst in that VC, and then also partners involved, right? But mostly the associates are the ones that take those calls. Now, when it comes to the expected outcome is okay. We like what we're hearing. So now let us proceed to further due diligence. And that further due diligence phase is now where they're gathering more documents, more evidences to back up whatever it is that the startup has said. So you expect them to request access to your data room, and at this particular point in time, you may want to execute an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, just to allow for that information sharing, and that your information is not used for any other purpose apart from aiding their decision making. So the next one is now the due diligence proper. And this due diligence, it all depends again on the priority of the deal, the size of the team, and other factors. Could range anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks. And it's more like an evidence and fact gathering phase, right? Whereby every single information is being confirmed. So we let us see your strategic plan, your 5 year strategic growth plan, your 3 year growth plan, right? Doing some product testing, let's say having some demos in your product just to understand how the product actually works, and then looking through your financial records, looking at audited financial statements, looking at management report just to be able to validate the sort of traction and the financial performance of the business, right, in that particular period. Also looking at the commercial side of things. So does this business, what are the commercial components of this business? Is it something that can grow? Is it something that can scale? What are the commercial upsides? Then also resizing the market, because many times what we see in pitch deck is that, let's say company that is building for the pharmacy, let's say pharmatech, they just research what is the size of the pharmaceutical market in the world, in Africa. So they just lift the figure and drop it there without critical consideration as to what sort of market size they're able to assess based on the smaller segment within the pharmaceutical space that they are playing. So the VC want to do a deeper dive into resizing the market just to understand the market opportunity. Then also critical is valuation of the business and trying to price the deal, because again you are going to be investing into the deal at a particular valuation, so no VC wants to overpay for the startup. So you expect that at this particular phase there will be a lot of valuation negotiation, and they'll be looking at the projections that drive this valuation just to be sure that it makes sense. Then another critical part is the legal and regulatory aspect, very very critical. So depending on the industry, certain regulatory or certain licensing, certain approvals will be required. Let's say for fintech, in depending on the fintech company, you need like an anti-money laundering clearance. All of these different documents should be in your data room for the VC to be able to sit there. And if there are critical partnership agreements that have been signed, it has to be in your data room to validate the fact that this partnership actually exists. Also, in the legal due diligence, they're also trying to look at, okay, does this found with the founders, they have past criminal records? Are there some sort of related party transactions between the firm and, let's say, another firm that they have founded? So these are the different aspects of what they tend to look at in terms of the legal part, and also doing some sort of reference check on the founder. So sometimes some VCs could go as far as employing the services of an independent person to help them out with this reference check. Now, in terms of the source of information where the VCs tend to turn to is like the startup data room, and like I mentioned, the startup data room is very, very critical. You want to ensure that all the different documents that your investor is going to be looking at, that you have them there. It has a way of collapsing the time that is taken to conduct due diligence, and overall it shows some sort of intentionality and organization within your team. Then looking at the speak with customers, have customer review sessions, look at testimonials from customers, speak to customers that you're serving. And this is usually critical, especially for startups that are serving B2B clients. They want to speak to that B2B customer just to ensure that you are actually serving them well and the product is doing what you said the product is doing. And also speaking with investors, past investors in the company, trying to understand what the experiences are, what is the weakness within the team, how will they speak to the character of the founders, and how well they've been able to execute on their promises from the very first time they raised money from those investors to this new round that they are raising. So it's very much important. And like I mentioned, this will usually take between 4 to 6 weeks. And the analysts and the associates will tend to do the groundwork of due diligence, but definitely with the guidance from partners that periodically review and then also give feedback. Then, in terms of the expected outcome from the due diligence process, this is more internal, that it all culminates into an investment memorandum that contains all the different information about that particular investment opportunity, from the problem to the solution to the market opportunity to the returns analysis to the valuation of the company to the growth to competitive analysis. So sometimes some firms even call it investment we call it an information memorandum. So all of this document is now gathered together and then is now sent to the investment committee, where decision is being made whether to invest in the company or not to invest in the company. So usually the last stage is like in the due diligence process or review process is discussion at the IC. So the investment committee has that responsibility of making decisions on deals, and before a decision is passed on a deal, a lot of questions is going to be asked. So the investment committee will sit, and the associate that was responsible for that particular deal gets to make a presentation to the investment committee, and a lot of questions are being asked. And if these questions are not answered satisfactorily, the team tends to go back to conduct further due diligence and then come back to the IC with answers. Right. So what is critical for the investment committee? Most of the time, they're always very big on governance. They're very big on risk. They're very big on the market opportunity, right? And then also the return potentials of that particular business. Now, like I mentioned, the key source of information for the IC is the investment memorandum that is being presented. But to a large extent, also they leverage their expertise, their knowledge of the industry to be able to look critically into the business, and also their network. Sometimes talking to an MD, perhaps the analyst and the associate will not be able to reach. Right. And in terms of the timelines, honestly, most times can take between 6 to 8 weeks before an investment makes it to the IC. Again, it all depends on a lot of factors like the priority or how often IC sits. Some IC tend to sit like twice in a quarter, right? So to be able to undergo first stage IC and second stage IC. Now, who are the people that are usually involved in the IC? Mostly the partners, the principals in the firm, and then they will have external IC members, right? Just to ensure that sort of balance, just to ensure that proper governance. And that is what we see with most funds, because limited partners are very big on governance. So they would require an external member to be in the IC just to ensure that there is an adequate checks and balances. So in terms of the expected outcome, it will always lead into an investment decision to say, okay, yes, we are going to invest into this company, and if we're investing, this is the amount that we're going to be investing at so and so terms and conditions. So that's pretty much what it is overall when it comes to the processes involved when it comes to deal review. So right, so the best way to scale any due diligence exercise is to be very, very prepared. You have to research the VC, understand their investment criteria, understand their investment rationale, understand their investment thesis. It helps you to know how best to position yourself for that VC. Also, you should be able to have a holistic checklist of the different documents that you should have in your data room, just to ensure that when the investor is asking, that you are able to provide the necessary information. Because when you don't have the information, and maybe at the time they're asking, that is when you are going to source it. It shows that you're untidy. It shows that you're not organized, right? So it can really impact on your ability to eventually raise for them, right? Makes a raise from that particular investor. So another thing that is very critical that I would also want to restate, that when it comes to early stage investment, that the founding team is very, very critical. Is an essential part of the decision making process of the VC firm. So it's important that you want to put your firm, your company in the first light to showcase the skills and abilities of the management team. Now that wraps it up with this particular video on due diligence. Now, in case you are a VC analyst working in a VC firm, if you check the link below, I've included a template of initial reviews, calls, and different checklists that is going to be helpful to you in doing your work. And then, if you're a founder, I've also included a link to to a checklist of different documents that you should have in your data room just to help you get prepared. If you found this video very, very helpful, smash the subscribe button, and don't forget, this is Miracle. Thank you very much.